Well, it's Halloween season, and it's been a while since I've given the Super NES some love on this channel, so let's just mow through a bunch of spooky SNES horror games to bust out this month. First up, you can't go through October without dusting off Zombies Ate My Neighbors at least once. This game is over-the-top madcap fun. You play as a teenage kid trying to save your neighbors while the town is getting overrun with zombies, and not just zombies, there's over 50 levels with all sorts of callbacks to various horror films and B-movies. What makes this work is the wacky sense of humor along with solid and detailed graphics. The monsters are all fun to look at. You'll see all sorts of bizarre stuff like these creepy little axe-murdering kids. There's some pretty insane boss battles too in the later stages, like giant babies. Your main weapon is a squirt gun, but you also get a variety of special weapons like soda pop grenades, freezing fire hydrants, and you can put out these clown decoys to distract the monsters. This game does get ridiculously difficult in some of the later stages, but it's still a blast, especially with 2 players. Next up, Clock Tower. I did a full video on this a while back, but it's worth mentioning again. This was developed and released by Human Entertainment on the Super Famicom in 1995 and never saw a release outside of Japan, although English fan translations do exist. This is totally worth checking out as there's just nothing quite like this on the Super NES. It's a point-and-click game similar to an adventure game on PC. You play as Jennifer, a young girl getting stalked in this mansion by a murderer called the Scissor Man. It's literally just this creepy little guy with a giant pair of scissors chasing you around, and everything about this is just spooky and awesome. The mood and atmosphere of this game is unnerving, and as you search the mansion, you'll find out more little tidbits about the story along the way. And to say too much about it would be a disservice to the game. Definitely check this one out if you get the chance. Well, here's one I'd never heard of, Musha, the classic Japanese tale of horror, released by Sega in 1992. You play as a spearman who has to travel into the abyss to save Shizuka. This is a pretty straightforward 2D platformer where you fight through hordes of hideous monsters. I really like the vibe that this game gives off with the darker art design and the detail on the monsters. Also, the music is actually really good. Unfortunately, the controls are just awkward and stiff. Using the spear is fine, but your character is kinda slow and jumping is weird. You can kinda do this floating thing if you hold up while you jump. The L and R buttons put you into a defensive crouch, which is unique, but otherwise the controls make it tough to really recommend this one, especially since it goes for like $70 or more on the open market. That's a shame too, because I really want to like this game. It could have been a more nuanced alternative to the Castlevania series. Have you ever played this one before? So one night Porky Pig was reading vacation brochures and planning a holiday, and then he fell asleep and had nightmares about being on a holiday, I guess? That's the premise for Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday, a platformer where you have to navigate Porky Pig through all sorts of spooky environments. The controls are simple. You can jump, duck, and toss fruit at the enemies, and that's about it. This was probably geared more towards a younger audience, but what's most impressive about this is the graphics and animations. Look at how detailed Porky Pig is and how he moves around, as well as some of the other enemies and background elements. Also, the weather seems to change in this game. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's all spooky and foggy, and other times it's raining. And eat your heart out, Castlevania Bloodlines. Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday also features a cool rotating level. How about that? This game goes for like $6 as a loose cartridge, and you could do way worse. Well, this looks freaking awesome. Laplace No Ma, which translated literally means Laplace's Demon. This was another Japan-only game, so you'll need to acquire an English translation patch in order to play. Released originally for the Turbo Duo in 1993 and ported to the SNES in 1995, it's an RPG but not like what you're expecting. The story takes place in 1924 Massachusetts. 3 children entered Weathertop Mansion and 2 of them were murdered. One of them is a young girl who's gone missing and you play a detective trying to find her. Actually, you can pick from a number of different trades and you can have different people team up in your party as well, but there's a real-world feel to all of this. You can just use guns, and one of the people in your party is a journalist who can take pictures of the monsters you find along the way and sell them at the shops in town for money. This looks really cool. Basically, if Final Fantasy took place in a spooky old haunted mansion, and I feel like I'm going to have to spend some more time with this one. Maybe I'll stream it on Twitch sometime this month, which, by the way, I'm on the Twitch now if you're into that sort of thing. Twitch.tv/Friday Night Arcade if you want to come hang out sometime. Hope to see you there. Nosferatu, developed and released by Sega in 1995. I've always wondered what would happen if you could play through Castlevania as Dalton from Roadhouse, and this game makes that dream a reality for me. Punching and roundhouse kicking your way through hordes of classic movie monsters. You play as Kyle, yes Kyle, and you're trying to save your girlfriend from the title character Nosferatu. This plays as kind of a cinematic platformer, somewhere in the neighborhood of Blackthorn or Prince of Persia. The levels are somewhat non-linear and you'll have to solve various puzzles as well as fight through monsters to make it through. The controls are a little clunky and it can be tough to get the hang of some of the combo moves. I have a really hard time getting the slide attack to work in this game, which is annoying because you need it to pass certain obstacles. I dig the darker tone of this game though, and the soundtrack is easily one of the better scores on the console. If you're into this sort of thing, it would absolutely be worth the time to master the controls and make your way all the way through this one, although you'll need to set aside some time. You've got infinite continues, but unfortunately no password or save feature. You remember that 1989 horror movie called Warlock, or the sequel Warlock the Armageddon, starring Julian Sands? Doesn't ring a bell? Nothing? Well, they made a Super NES game based on one of them, and if that doesn't terrify you, well it should, because it was made by LJN. So actually this game looks like it could have been kinda cool with a little bit of polishing. You play as whoever the main character is from the movies, I honestly have no idea, but you're trying to stop Julian Sands' Warlock character by navigating through all of these eerie environments and fighting off monsters. You've got an unlimited magic projectile as well as this magic ball that you can sort of toss around and use it to mash enemies or pick up hard to reach items. The cutscenes are actually pretty slick looking. If only the enemies didn't take a million hits to die. Seriously, why won't you die? What am I shooting this guy with? A water pistol? So every once in a while, the Warlock just shows up and then traps you in some overpowered enemy on screen, and you're just kind of stuck there till hopefully you outlast the monster. The graphics and levels are all really cool looking, and the music isn't half bad, but this game can't quite decide if it wants to be a hack-and-slash Castlevania type game or a cinematic platformer like Blackthorn, and unfortunately it's not really good at being either one of them. If you can get the hang of the awkward controls, you might like it just for something different.
Is that the best you can do?
In the summer of 1995, my best friend Jason got Doom 2 for his PC that had like a Pentium 2 in it, and we played the ever-loving crap out of that game. I had never experienced anything quite like it, but I didn't have a computer myself that was capable of running Doom, so imagine my joy when I found out that the first one was coming out on Super Nintendo, and they were using the Super FX chip to pull off this feat of wizardry. Holy crap! The still screenshots in Nintendo Power looked cool enough, and I actually owned and played Super NES Wolfenstein, and it was pretty awesome. So this had to be good, right? I couldn't wait to pick up my pre-order from the local game shop, and imagine my disappointment when I plopped down on the couch and this is what I got? It's Doom. If the Doom guy had beer goggles and every level was covered in quicksand. Your guy is so slow. You get stuck on the walls, the controls barely qualify as responsive. I ended up convincing my mom to take the game back to the store, and she pretended to be the confused parent who just bought her kid the wrong game so they'd give me a straight-up refund. Thanks for the assist, Mom. Okay, so to be fair, looking back now, it's incredible they even got this to work on the Super NES at all. Seriously, the level of texture detail needed for this was way more intensive than the simple wall palettes of Castle Wolfenstein. It's a wonder my Super NES didn't just catch fire when I tried to play this. Also, the music is really good. Like, really, really good. It sounds great on the Super Nintendo. If this was all you had, and especially if you hadn't played the computer version before, this would have been pretty cool back in the day. It's just for me, at the time, it was unplayable since I had spent so much time with the PC version. And with no password or save feature, you'd have to be really dedicated to get all the way through. What did you think? Did you have Super NES Doom growing up? Okay, so we looked at some clunkers, but leave it to Capcom to save the day with Demon's Crest. At a glance, this looks like your basic 2D hack-and-slash platformer, but this one's hiding a few surprises. It's actually a spin-off from the Ghosts and Goblins series, but don't let that scare you, it isn't nearly as difficult. In fact, the play control is dang flawless. You can jump, shoot, climb, bash stuff, and even hover indefinitely. Once you get the hang of it, it's really smooth and easy to control. There's also some RPG elements to this with weapons and power-ups. It's a lot like Mega Man 2 in that you can kind of pick and choose your own path to the end. The graphics are fantastic with beautiful gothic areas to explore, and the level of detail on your character and the enemies is amazing. And like any good Capcom game, you know the music is going to be gold. This game goes for insane prices on the open market, but you can pick it up on the Nintendo Switch Virtual Store for cheap, and I absolutely recommend checking this one out. Okay, fine, I'll mention Super Castlevania IV. I did an entire standalone video on this a while back, but if I do a Super NES Halloween video and don't mention it, someone's probably gonna yell at me. What's not to love about Super Castlevania IV? Once again, the Belmonts are tasked with defeating the evil Dracula and his minions. Actually, this is more of a soft reboot of the first NES Castlevania game, with familiar characters and levels. What's so great about Castlevania is that it's really more of a callback to all of the great horror films of old. Dracula, Medusa, Frankenstein's monster, and even Death himself are all bosses that you'll fight along the way. The music is top-notch, although I'll argue that some of the tracks are a little too slow and dull compared to the upbeat and intense tunes of the original NES games. I've also had some interesting conversations with a lot of you in the comments about the play control in this game. For me, this was the first Castlevania I purchased with my own money, so it's the one I connect with the most, and that control scheme, being able to whip in all directions as well as flinging around, that's forever seared into my brain as Castlevania perfection. But a lot of you pointed out that it's almost too perfect and makes your character overpowered, defeating the use for special weapons. I sorta get that, but having the triple boomerang was way more overpowered than the whip, and you can take out some bosses in under 10 seconds with that thing. I always used whatever special weapons I could find, so I'm not sure that that argument holds much water for me. Every time I played Castlevania after this and they reverted back to the NES style controls, it always felt like a downgrade in my view, but I at least see where you're coming from. What did you think? What was your favorite Castlevania play control style? The overpowered controls from Super Castlevania IV, or the more subdued controls from sequels like Castlevania Bloodlines? And what are some of your other favorite Super NES games to play during the Halloween season? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.